Okay, so we're doing something a little bit different this time.
Oh, yeah.
We're diving into hurricanes in the middle of hurricane season.
Right in the thick of it.
You know, with Hurricane Milton spinning out there in the Gulf, you've definitely got a point, though. This season is far from over.
Not even close.
So you sent over the latest Wikipedia article on the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season and a whole bunch of forecasting data.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, let's do it.
let's dive in.
It really is like we're trying to analyze a movie while we're still sitting here watching it, popcorn flying everywhere.
Right. And this movie has had some pretty wild plot twists.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
The Wikipedia article really lays it all out, named storms, hurricanes. We've even had a couple of those big Category 5s
We have.
this year. But what's really got me wondering is how different this season has been from what everyone expected. Back in April, we had like predictions coming out our ears.
Oh, we did universities, meteorological agencies. Everybody and their brother had an opinion on how this season was going to go. Some people saying normal year, other people saying, oh, it's going to be a crazy one. Remember the University of Pennsylvania?
Oh, yeah?
They threw out this crazy number 33 named Storm.
33.
I know, right?
I mean, 33. You'd think they'd have better things to do over there in those hallowed halls of academia.
Right.
Did they just pull that number out of a hat or what?
Well, nobody's got a crystal ball.
True.
But there is actual science behind these forecasts.
Okay.
The thing is, there are so many factors that come into play.
Right.
And even tiny little changes can just have this ripple effect.
Okay.
Take sea surface temperatures, for example. Everyone knows warmer water, that's like rocket fuel for hurricanes.
Right. Warmer water, more hurricanes, got it.
Exactly.
But this year kind of threw everyone for a loop with that whole Atlantic Niña thing.
It did.
Like, 1 minute we're hearing about how warm the Atlantic is, and the next it's like someone slammed on the brakes.
Right.
What even is an Atlantic Niña?
So an Atlantic Niña, it's a climate pattern kind of like La Niña,
Okay.
but it's specifically affecting the Atlantic.
Got it.
And you're right, it threw a real wrench in the works.
It did.
See, while a La Niña was brewing in the Pacific, the Atlantic decided to do its own thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the equatorial waters cooled down really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And that messed with everybody's predictions.
Interesting.
Yeah. So while we're still trying to figure out exactly what an Atlantic Niña does, it seems like it has a really big impact on how many hurricanes actually form.
Okay.
This year, it looks like it kind of acted like a counterbalance to those really warm Atlantic waters.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got these forecasts, some more accurate than others, but then we have what actually happened.
Right.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Yes.
This season has been anything but predictable.
Not at all.
I mean, it started out like a lamb. Remember how late the first storm was?
Unusually late, Tropical Storm Alberto didn't show up until June 19th. That made it the latest start to the season since 2014.
Oh.
People were starting to think maybe the forecasters had lost their touch.
Yeah.
And then, bam.
Hurricane Beryl.
Hurricane Beryl explodes onto the scene Category 5 in July.
I mean, that's unheard of.
It's almost unheard of, yeah.
I remember seeing those satellite images. It was like this monstrous beast had just woken up from a nap.
Yeah.
And you and I, we've talked about climate change before. Is this a sign of things to come?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
Beryl's rapid intensification and the fact that it even formed that early in the season has definitely got people talking.
Yeah.
The thing is, we can't definitively say any single hurricane like that one is caused by climate change.
Right.
It's more complicated than that.
Okay, so walk me through it.
Yeah.
How does the changing climate impact hurricanes?
Okay, so think of it this way. Warmer waters give hurricanes more fuel to work with.
Okay.
And we are seeing a very clear trend of rising ocean temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
And this means that hurricanes have the potential to intensify much faster. Yeah.
And that makes them even more dangerous.
Mm.
Whether that was the case with Beryl, though, is still up for debate.
And it's not just the intensity either. It seems like this season has just been full of surprises, like storms forming in places or at times that we wouldn't normally expect.
Yeah, you're right. This year has really shown us just how limited our forecasting abilities still are.
Mm.
Like, don't get me wrong, we've gotten much better at predicting the path and the intensity of a hurricane once it's already formed.
Right.
You know, thanks to all the technology and modeling and stuff. But when it comes to predicting how many hurricanes will form months in advance, you know, where they're going to go,
Right.
that's still a huge challenge.
So it's kind of like you're trying to predict where a leaf is going to land in a hurricane
Exactly.
instead of just like focusing on the hurricane itself.
Yeah, and it all comes back to that complexity we were talking about before.
Right.
There are just so many variables at play. You've
Yeah.
got wind shear patterns, you've got those climate oscillations that we talked about.
Even dust traveling all the way from the Sahara Desert can have an impact.
Wow, I had no idea.
It's wild.
Okay, so with all of this going on, how do we even like wrap our heads around it?
Right?
It's like one minute we're glued to the tropics watching every little wiggle of a potential storm,
Right.
and then the next minute we're back to like our regularly scheduled programming.
And that's the danger. We can't afford to let our guard down just because it's not peak hurricane season.
Right.
This year has really shown us that we need to be proactive instead of reactive.
So less, oh no, a hurricane, and more like, okay, what's the plan?
Exactly. We need to be thinking about hurricane preparedness all year round.
Okay.
And that doesn't just mean having a go bag ready.
Right.
It means really understanding the risks where we live.
Okay.
Are we in an evacuation zone? What are their community's emergency plans? Do we have a communication plan for our family?
Right.
These are things that we should be asking ourselves even when it's sunny outside.
Right. Because when a hurricane is knocking at your door, that is not the time to be figuring out where you're going or who you're calling.
Exactly. It's like they always say, prepare for the worst, hope for the best.
Exactly. And that preparation goes beyond just our own homes and families, right?
Absolutely.
It's also about making sure that we have things like resilient infrastructure, better building codes, and disaster response systems that actually work for everyone.
Right, because the reality is hurricanes, they don't impact everyone equally.
That's very true. We
Yep.
see those images after a hurricane, and it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But then you hear the stories of, communities coming together, rebuilding, supporting each other.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the human cost of these storms
Yeah.
and like the resilience of the human spirit.
It really does. And those human stories, those are what often get lost in all the statistics and the damage assessments.
Right.
We can talk about, billions of dollars in economic losses,
Right.
which is just staggering.
Yeah.
But behind every single dollar is a family trying to rebuild their lives. A business owner wondering if they'll ever be able to reopen their doors.
Exactly.
That Wikipedia article on this season, it really touches on that. And it's just this stark reminder that the true cost of hurricanes, it goes way beyond just property damage.
You mentioned Hurricane Helene before.
Yeah.
And that storm was just devastating. That Wikipedia article said that over 240 people died because of Helene.
Yeah, it's a tragedy.
I can't even imagine.
And it just underscores the need for us to keep investing in things like early warning systems, evacuation planning, mental health resources for survivors.
Yeah, those are all so important. It's
Yeah.
so true. I mean, it's easy to just focus on like the immediate aftermath, right? Like everybody's scrambling for aid and the damage is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But you're right, the long-term recovery,
Mm.
like helping these communities actually rebuild, that's where the real work begins.
Yeah, it's a long road.
It is.
And it's a hard road, and it requires all of us to really step up. We
Yeah.
can't just, like you said, show up after a disaster and then expect everything to just magically go back to normal. It takes time, resources, and a deep understanding of what these communities are actually going through.
Well, you've definitely given us a lot to think about
Well, good.
as we watch Hurricane Milton out there in the Gulf, and we're kind of bracing ourselves for what might come next.
Mm.
What is like the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from all of this?
Don't wait for the next hurricane to show up at your doorstep. This season, this 2024 season, it's been a wake-up call.
It has.
It's a reminder that we have to be ready, not just for the storm itself, but for everything that comes after.
So we're talking about being proactive,
Mm.
having a plan, and making sure that our communities are ready for whatever's coming next.
Exactly. Having those tough conversations now before it's too late.
Right.
Talk to your family about your evacuation plan, find out what your community is doing to prepare, and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
The more we know, the better prepared we'll all be.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening. We've covered so much from the science behind these hurricane forecasts to the human toll that these storms take. But you know what? I think the biggest takeaway for me is that knowledge is power. The more we understand about hurricanes, the better equipped we'll be to deal with them.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, there you have it. Another deep dive in the books. Stay safe out there, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.